Next up, I'd love to introduce you to David Mariani. He is the Chief Technology Officer and founder of AtScale. Today, he's going to talk to us about how to use the semantic layer on big data to drive AI and BI impact. Prior to AtScale, Dave was the VP of Engineering at Cloud and at Yahoo, where he built the world's largest multi-dimensional cube for business intelligence on Hadoop. He's a big data visionary and serial entrepreneur. Welcome to the stage, Dave. All right, Dave, welcome to the DATAcated conference. It's great to have you here. I noticed you're on mute. I'm about to hand it over to you. So, oh, there we go. I'm gonna give you the stage. Let me know when to share your screen, and I'll be backstage for about 10 minutes, and then we'll be back for questions.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks for having me. And would love to, if you could share my slides, we'll go ahead and get to it. So thanks everybody for joining us. So we're going to talk about semantic layer today, and I'm going to touch upon some of the questions about Excel. And I know there's a lot of love and hate in Excel, and I hope I have a solution that everybody can be happy. And it really starts with really a semantic layer. Semantic layers have been around for a long time. I mean, if you just do a Google search, what you can see here is what comes up at a Wikipedia has a really good definition. And the key things to sort of point out there are what's in bold. It's a business representation of your data. It's business friendly, it's business terms. And it allows for people to access data, read, self-service autonomously. And that means that everyone can use data in an organization, not just somebody who understands as a data engineer or knows how to write SQL. So a semantic layer really does free people up. So this is sort of credit this picture to Tristan Handy, who's the founder of DBT, and he sort of drew this picture of what the current approach to data access is. And if you could see, what you can see here on this slide is that all the tools and all the access are straight to your cloud data platforms or your data platforms. So a direct connection there. Now, what's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture is that, just think about it. Everybody who's using Tableau versus Power BI or Excel, they're all going to be creating their definitions of gross margin or revenue differently. And even within those tools, within the workbooks of those tools, from analyst to analyst, they're going to be defining those business terms differently. So that's obviously not ideal. It creates inconsistency, and it then causes mistrust in the data. So a different approach is to use a semantic layer where all that business logic lies in one place, and you calculate things like metrics like revenue and gross margin in one place. And then all those tools can plug in and get live access to that data with consistency. It also provides this control plane for data governance, which means some of the things we talked about in Andrea's presentation. What about governance? Well, now you have a single plane to give that people access to data. So finance can see revenue, marketing can't. But it's the same data, same semantic layer, but the governance can be restricted based on your user identity and your role to that access. East can see East sales, but West can't see East sales. It's another example of some governance. So it gives you one place to really do that. So what does a semantic layer look like in reality? Well, what you can see on the left here is that you can see that we have a semantic model. So this is all powered by a data model that's a semantic model, where that modeling has been done by a subject matter expert, and then everybody can then consume that model that you see on the right. And what you see there is you see Tableau, that same look and feel, same definitions, same business-friendly terms. You see Excel and you see Power BI. Now let's talk about Excel for a second. So the reason why IT hates Excel is that end users sometimes use Excel as a database, as a dumping ground. And then they really lose governance. So all sort of the careful crafting and access to data through BI tools is all lost when it gets exported to Excel. So the key is not to export data to Excel. The key is to give Excel users a live connection into the semantic layer so that they have cells in Excel pointing to cells in the semantic layer, which will point us to data in platforms like Snowflake or BigQuery. And you know that those cells are always going to be up to date and consistent. And then they can create their own data and calculations around it to do visualizations and to have that portability that Andrea was talking about mailing files around. But when they mail files around, those cells are still connected to the semantic layer. So you can have your cake and eat it too. I've never been successful in wresting Excel out of the hands of users. So why not make Excel consistent with the semantic layer? So there's different elements to the semantic layer, and you can see there's some core capabilities here. And this is how AtScale defines the semantic layer. You got to be able to connect to it and connect live to it. So there's no good if you're importing data, you're creating Tableau data extracts, or you're importing data into Power BI. You're just creating more copies there. So the goal of the semantic layer is not to create copies, to leave the data where it is. The other important aspect is that you've got to have a rich modeling layer where a subject matter expert can create these data models. They can do what's difficult in terms of understanding where the data is and how it relates to each other, and then everybody else can use it. So not everybody needs to be a data engineer, just the person creating that model. By creating that model, now anyone with Excel on their desktop can then take advantage of that semantic layer. Performance optimization is key. So you've got to be able to deliver speed of thought queries without moving data or without creating another data copy. And that's tough. That means you got to have performance optimization that can respond and optimize based on the queries that the semantic layer is intercepting. And that is called, we call it autonomous data engineering, where we're creating aggregate tables in the data platform automatically based on user behavior. And of course, you got to have all that governance so you can make sure that only people can see what they're supposed to see without having to create a bunch of complicated logic in the BI tools or the AI tools or the custom applications. So there's lots of good uses of the semantic layer. You can use it for cloud analytics optimization. So make those cloud data warehouses like Snowflake, Scream, or Databricks. You can use them as an enterprise metric store. So you can have a single source of truth across the organization, regardless of whether people are using BI tools, AI platforms, or applications and developing custom applications. You can use it to communicate between AI and BI. The semantic layer can be the fabric that joins those two teams. So you can have historical analysis and prescriptive and predictive analysis all in one place. And then you can also not have to give up your multidimensional analysis, because with a proper semantic layer, it's multidimensional and it's fully powered. So how does AtScale do it? AtScale sits right in between the data consumption for the different applications, BI tools and AI tools, and sits on top of your cloud data warehouses, your data lakes, and your SaaS applications. And by doing that and having that single semantic layer, we can provide, and the semantic layer provides, really simplified and accelerated access to data through self-service. It also provides you that control and that complexity, controls the complexity and cost of analytics, and it provides consistency, which drives trust in the data because now you have data governance. So where the rubber meets the road, we at AtScale have taken the TPCDS benchmark. We've ran it on 10 terabytes, and we've actually ran that with and without the AtScale semantic layer across a number of different data platforms, the most popular ones. And you can see that what we talked about acceleration, speed of thought queries, in terms of cost management, and in terms of simplicity, semantic layer can really drastically reduce your time to value, as well as increase your time to value by reducing that complexity and making data available to anyone who wants to use it. So that's it, Kate. Looking forward to some great questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dave. We have some great questions in the chat, but I actually had a question for you myself. Early on, you said leave the data where it is and don't copy it. Why is that? What could possibly go wrong if we keep copying data?
Yeah, that's been the sort of default solution for providing what users want in terms of interactivity. So Tableau data extracts, which are basically, it's importing data into Tableau, and there's a whole nother database behind the scenes. And of course, that has issues because it's never as scalable as the original data. So you're basically taking all this investment that you invested in Snowflake and BigQuery and Redshift and Synapse and Databricks, and you're throwing it out the window, and you're putting it on some Windows servers and hoping it's going to scale for you. So it's a bad solution, but it's the default solution that people do today. So we think the semantic layer should provide that acceleration, but leave the data in those data platforms so that it can scale with those data platforms.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Thank you so much. Zolt has a good question here. Is the semantic layer assuming that there's clean data? Is this something that happens after data wrangling?
Great question. It's either. Sometimes you want to get access to the raw data if you're a data scientist, because that's part of what you're trying to learn. But sometimes if you're a business analyst and you're a financial analyst, you need the clean data because you're about to prepare the company's books. And so a semantic layer can behave as both. And transformations and those sort of cleansing and calculations can be done in the semantic layer. So a lot of that sort of brute force ETL sort of transformations for cleaning data can be done virtually in the semantic layer versus having to physically create new copies of that data.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. Grace has a question here. She's asking, do you have any resources on best practices for incorporating the semantic layer within existing systems?
Yeah, we if you go to atscale.com and you go to the resources page, we have a great white paper and buyer's guide for semantic layer. And I wrote that myself, actually, the buyer's guide. I tried to be as objective as possible. So I think there are some really good resources that are objective resources that aren't going to try to sell you on AtScale's version of the semantic layer, but talk about what's important in the semantic layer and how you can integrate it with your systems.
Yes, absolutely. I know you have a lot of great resources on AtScale. There's, interestingly, there's an ebook that recently came out with the 15 data leaders. We're actually going to hear from one of those data leaders in just a few minutes. Megan is speaking after you. So
yes,
what a good coincidence here. I actually just realized that was not planned, but definitely recommend that folks check out that ebook as well. Really,
and wait around for Megan's presentation. It's amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's move on to John's question here. Does the semantic layer take advantage of common classifications used, for example, in an upper level ontology?
Yeah, one of the reasons I flashed by really fast, you could see that the data catalog of the enterprise data catalog is running alongside of the AtScale semantic or the semantic layer. And I think it's super important for metadata to be shared between the semantic layer and for those enterprise data catalogs. So that when the data modeler is creating those semantic models, they're using the same terminology that's been defined in the corporate ontology. And so that integration is really important. So absolutely, the semantic layer needs to take advantage of the corporate ontology when it comes to creating that consistency and consistent business terms.
Yes, absolutely. And then we'll take one last question here from Manisha. And the question is, how is the semantic layer aligning AI and BI to business outcomes? I think it'll be great maybe if you have a use case or example that we can walk through here.
Yeah. So when it comes to when you think about when you're trying to deliver value, right? The semantic layer can combine both traditional sort of descriptive and diagnostic analysis. That's what happened yesterday. And a simple example is, as a business analyst, I have access to historical sales numbers. And so from that, I can go and I can look and see what happened last quarter, et cetera, last week, compare this year versus last year. That's all great. That's descriptive and diagnostic kind of analysis. So descriptive is, what happened, diagnostic of why did it happen. But when you think about predicting the future, that's really coming from AI and auto ML tools. And where, for example, I want to predict my future sales. Now, why would I want to predict my future sales? Well, so I can make sure I have inventory to support those predictions. And so that's predictive and prescriptive analytics. So the semantic layer can be that sort of common thread where now the data scientists can write to the semantic layer predicted sales, and the data can be collected for historical sales from the data warehouse. And now the business analyst and the data analyst can look at those side by side to have a complete picture of today and tomorrow.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for that example, Dave. And thank you so much for your time here with us today. Where can the audience go if they want to just follow up with you, on questions on semantic layer or at scale?
Atscale.com, ATs, well, you can see it up there in the thing. Atscale.com in the middle, and go to resources. There's a ton of really great stuff, including customer stories, use cases. So you can really see how customers can use a semantic layer to drive business outcomes.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time here. Hope you can watch the rest of the conference. We're going to keep this party moving.
Thanks, Kate.